What's up, everyone? Today I'm going to go over the hookup of the controllers for the Q-Power, and these will be the new controllers. This will be a specific video. Let's look at the table here. We can see this would be a case if you had the old original controllers, and there were some cases that Qiewa said that due to the time it took to ship because of COVID, the battery would drain low and it would cause some problems with these controllers and or this display that was the original display. So they sent a bunch of these new controllers out, I understand, new controllers and new display for people to swap out. So if you have these and you need help hooking them up, this should tell you what to do, or even if you purchase new controllers and you get these, this will help you hook them up. Okay, so first let's look at the original controllers. There's two of them. There's two controllers in the Q-Power, one for the front motor, one for the back. Here's the original ones. These were larger and they're 40 amp controllers. So that was originally in it. And this is the original display. Throttle display combination, has this red circle around it, has some colors on it. There might be a couple different ones of these, but they had colors on them, red button and such. So that's what was originally in the scooter. The new controllers that I got in mine, I understand there's many of them out there, or this is what they've been sending out, are smaller. You can see they're physically much smaller than the other ones. And if you look at them, these are 35 amp controllers. 35 amp. So when I first saw this, I'm thinking like, oh, they went to smaller controllers. That's going to take some power out of the scooter. Once I got mine up and running, the thing has extreme power with these 35 amp controllers. In fact, I'm guessing that the motors weren't even using the full 40 amps that these things were capable of pushing out, because with the 35 amp controllers in it, the thing is insanely, has insane acceleration and torque. I can't imagine that you'd want any more than that anyway. So these are good controllers in my opinion. It's really fast, it has a lot of acceleration, so that's good. So this video is specifically for how to install these two 35 amp controllers. If you don't have these 35 amp controllers that look just like this, then this video is not for whatever you have. So again, this is specific for these two 35 amp controllers. Now your display is going to look like this. It's all dark. You'll notice it doesn't have the colors on it like this other one does. So here's the difference in the display / throttle. This one's all dark, all black, has a silver ring there, where the older ones have some color on it like this. Aaron, come around the back here. There's no other markings on it other than on the bottom here. There's a sticker that says 60 volt 2020-08. I think the 2020-08 is a manufacturing year and month, so it's August 2020. But other than that, it just says 60 volts, green, LDX. There's no other markings on it that I can see, and it's all black on the front of it. So that's the new throttle / display. Okay, so one thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to replace your throttle cable. You can see both of these throttles have a short plug on it, and then a long cable, which the long cable goes down through your stem, out this side, and then in a hole at the front of the chassis. It goes into the inside of the chassis. Now I went and pulled off all there's sealant here. I removed all that so I have easy access to my cables. You might not have to go that far with it, but you will definitely need to replace your original throttle cable with the new one because they aren't the same. If we look at the original throttle cable, at the end that goes in the scooter, there's two plugs like this. The new throttle cable has one single plug that looks like this. There's 6 pins on it, and it's flat, and it's a single plug, so you can't use the same cable that was on your old throttle. The new throttle would come with this cable, and you're going to have to thread it down through here, which is one of the reasons why I took off all my sheathing, all the wire tie wraps, so these cables would be loose and I could pull the cable through there. Now originally this old cable was going down through the stem here like this. So one way you can do it is tie your new cable. Let's say this new cable wasn't going in there yet. Tie the end with the round piece on it. Just tie it to the end of this somehow, or tape it up good, and then as you slowly pull the cable, your old cable out, it would pull the new cable up through here. So that's one way of doing it. Whatever you choose, you're going to have to figure out a way to, the old cable will be easy to remove. You're going to have to find a way to run your new cable through this section of the stem right here for your new throttle. And as you can see, my new throttle I've got connected here. I've got my new cable going down here. I can pull on it, and you can see it's this cable right here, which then goes over to this side and is my plug on this end. So that's one thing you're going to have to do. Run your new throttle cable and remove the old throttle cable through the center of the stem. Okay, one thing I did on mine I want to show you real quick. Here's the older controllers again, and the 3 motor phase wires, the blue, yellow, green, thicker wires, have these kind of eye connectors on them, these metal eye connectors. And what they were for is, and on the other side, on the motor wires, they have the same connector. So basically what they were using, I've cut mine off, and I'll tell you why in a second. You can see the 2 eye connectors, and there's like a bolt going through it with a nut on the side. And that's how they were connecting the wires, by just tightening that nut there. So I don't really care for this solution, and mine were like this, and they were just taped up with electrical tape. I've seen some other ones. Somebody else had one that has just this big plastic yellow box that these 3 wires were going into, and is maybe like this big, so it's taking up a lot of room. They were just using that plastic box to isolate the wires or whatever. Unnecessary room being used for that. So what I did is I cut these off. I like just using wire nuts. These are going to, screw on. They're threaded on the inside. You put your 2 wires together, and you just turn them on, and they're going to secure the wires nice and tight. They're not going to vibrate off. There's going to be no chance for them to come off, and they're going to isolate the wires from shorting as well. So I like using wire nuts as opposed to something like this, which could come loose. And then if these connections are like loose, you could get some arcing. You could get some failures. I don't like doing that. So I cut all those off of my new controllers, and you can see I just have the wires there, yellow, blue, green. I've cut the wires off, so when I go to connect it to the motor wires, I'm just going to use wire nuts. Okay, so as you can see, I've kind of got my scooter gutted right now. Got all the wires disconnected, everything completely disconnected. One thing I want to mention is this is going to be part 1 of a 2-series video. This first part is just going to be how to wire it up to get your motors running, your front motor and your back motor. And then I'll do a secondary video on connecting up your lights, your headlights, your brake light, your tail light, the horn, and all that other stuff. So first, just the motors. We're worried about getting the motors running, and that's half the battle. Once we do that, I'll make a second video on hooking up the lights and the remaining stuff. Okay, so to start with here, I've got my battery removed. You don't have to do that. I did that just to try and make it more open, more clear for this video. So to start with, we have our 2 controllers here. Now this is very important. These 2 controllers, one is for the front and one is for the rear. You can see on this one there's an A right up in the corner there. The A controller is for the front, so I just went ahead and marked an F on it with a permanent marker just to make it easier for me to see. The A controller is for the front motor, so I'm going to put that near the front of the scooter. Take a look at the other one. There's a B on it. The B controller is for the rear motor. I marked an R on there for rear, so that's very important. B is for the rear, A is for the front. I'm going to set this one towards the rear because that's my rear controller. Okay, so now moving on. First thing we want to do is we want to look at the Hall connections, the Hall effect connections. And that's this plug coming out of the controller, big square plug with 5 wires on it, black, red, blue, green, yellow. Both controllers have this. And we're going to connect this up first to our motor wires coming from the scooter. So here's our front motor wire. It has our 3-phase wires, yellow, green, blue, and then our Hall effect connections. That square plug again. Now you can see on with the existing 40 amp controllers, there was a short cable. I guess yours may or may not have it. I believe it probably will if you had the original controllers. There's this short cable that's plugged on the Hall connection, goes through some small circuit board and comes out the other side. Same on the back motor wire. We have our 3-phase wires, our Hall connection, and we have that short cable coming off of the Hall connector. Okay, with these new 35 amp controllers, you don't need these adapter cables, so I'm going to pull those off. And again, there's just a little locking mechanism. You push down on it, then you can pull that off. I'm not going to use that, so I'm going to set that aside. Same on the front. Go set that aside for now. Okay, so the first thing we're going to hook up is our Hall connector from each controller to each motor. Again, here's our front motor wire. Here's our Hall connection. I'm simply going to plug directly from the controller onto the motor. Again, I've removed those little short bypass cables. Not using those anymore. Take those off. So we're going directly from the controller to the motor on both the front and the back. Now before you go ahead and put them together, we need to do some rewiring on these cables. And this is what you're looking for. You're looking at your colored wires coming from one side, one plug to the other. And first we're just going to look at the top side here, which has the locking mechanism. We have the red wire coming through on this side, and it comes out on the other side to the red wire. That's what we want. That's good. We have the black wire coming through on the top there on the other side, comes out on this side to the black wire. That's exactly what we want. Okay, now we're going to turn this over. And I've already done mine, so this is the correct wiring. You'll notice the green wire is in the middle, and the green wire comes out in the middle on the other side. That's correct. So far we have red to red, black to black, green to green. That's all correct. Now you'll notice on this one I have the blue wire coming in this side, and it's going to the yellow wire on the other side. And then I have the yellow wire on this side coming through to the blue wire on this side. So this is absolutely it has to be wired up this way. Basically blue to yellow, yellow to blue, and then green to green, red to red, and black to black. Has to be wired that way for this thing to work. If you don't have it wired like this, your motors aren't going to spin properly. So on mine originally, and yours may be different, I had the green wire from my motor was coming in here. So I had to remove that wire, move it over to the middle so it would match up with the green on the controller. Also, originally, my yellow was on this side, and my blue was on this side. So the blue, it went blue to blue, yellow to yellow on mine, although I had to move my green as well. That's wrong. You have to exactly have it like this. Blue going to yellow, green going to green, yellow going to blue, and then black to black, red to red. Has to be exactly like that. So if yours isn't like that, which it will not be, you have to rearrange these wires on one of these plugs or the other. Now, just for example, I'll show you how to do that. Inside these plugs, this one's the male side. You can see the male pins in there. This one's the female side. I did mine on the female side. It really doesn't matter if you do it on the male side or the female side. It doesn't matter as long as you get the colors right. Yellow to blue, blue to yellow, green to green, red to red, black to black. So no matter what your wire colors look like, you have to wire it up. It's easy to do. Basically use a tool, something like this, a long, small poker or something like that. And on these wires inside the connectors, here's the female side. You can see there's this small tab in the middle there. Now when that tab's pulled out, I'm bending it up a little, kind of like that, and it's pressed into the connector, this tab locks inside the plastic so the wire won't back out. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to take your poker, and it's on the side. You can see, I don't know how good you can see there, Aaron, but this would be the side where the pin goes up. You can see it kind of looks like a little ramp going up. Your pin would go inside there. The opposite side, the bottom side, that's flat against the connector, you're going to basically just push this connector down, or this poker down into there. And what you're doing when you do that is you're trying to, and it should go right in there, you're going to basically be pushing your poker over this tab, and then when you're in there, you're just going to move it a little bit, trying to bend this tab straight down. Once that tab is bent down like that, the wire's going to come straight out. So let me just demonstrate that real quick here on this one. We're not using these cables, so I'm just going to use it to demonstrate. So you can see here's my yellow wire. If I pull on it, I'm trying to pull it out, it's not coming out because that tab is in there. I'm going to take the poker. I'm going to look for the side that's flat against the plastic, not the side that's kind of ramping up. I'm going to stick the poker in at that bottom spot. Just going to push it in there. And actually, it's pushing out because I've hit that tab with the poker. And you can see that wire just comes straight out. Again, basically all I did is I stuck the poker inside the plastic, and it pushed down on that tab so it released the wire. Here, let's do it again with this blue wire. Blue wire is tight, it's not coming out. I look for the bottom side of it, stick the poker in there, just push it in. You can kind of see through the plastic there what I'm doing, not too well. So I'm just pushing the poker in there, and then once I hit that tab and push it down, the wire comes out. Okay, so at this point, let's say I want to reverse these wires. Yellow was up here, blue was down here. I want to flip them so blue's up there, yellow's up there, or whatever you need to do depending on what your colors are. So now that I've got these out, I just need to put them back in. But before I do that, I want to make sure these tabs aren't too flat. So I'm going to take my little poker or a small flat screwdriver, whatever, put it under the tab. You don't want to push it too much because you don't want to break it. And I'm just going to bend it up a little bit, like that. Can you see that, Aaron? So you can see that tab's kind of now sticking back up there. You got that, Aaron? Mm-hmm. I'm going to do the same on the other one, because when you push them out, when you take them out, you might bend those tabs down where they won't engage anymore when you put them in the plastic. So you want to push them up a little bit. Okay, so now that we got those tabs bent up a little bit on each wire, it's simply a matter of just pushing the wires back in where you need them. Make sure they are going in the same way as the other ones. So again, I can see that the pin side, the kind of ramp up side, is going to the top there. So I want to do the same, put this one in the same way. And once you just put it in the back there, push it in. If you push it in far enough, that little tab should engage on the inside. And once it does, I can't pull that wire back out. Same with the yellow one. I'm going to push that in this side. Push it in as far as I can. I kind of heard it snap a little bit. Once it's in there, that tab is now keeping that wire from coming out. So we've effectively changed the position of our two wires. So that's how you do that. You could also do it on the other side of the pin, the male side. And to do that, same thing. It has a, here's the male pin. It has this bigger, longer tab that you can see here. It actually could be easier to do it on this side. And if you look down the connector, you can easily see the pin, and then you can see that. Can you see that tab going up there, Aaron? That's holding it in. It's easier to see on this one, but then you just take your poker, press down on that tab, and then your wire should come straight out. Again, here's the tab on this one. It's longer. It's longer than the other one, but that's what locks these things into the connectors. Then again, you could just swap your wires around however you need to do it. Make sure you put the tab back in the same way. After you bend it up, make sure it's bent up enough like this. And then once you push the wire in, it locks in place again. So you could do either side. It doesn't matter what side. The important thing is that when you plug these two together, in the end, when all is said and done, you've got this wired again. So on the top side, we have red going through to red, black going through to black, and then we flip it over. We've got green in the middle going to green, but now we've got yellow going to blue, and blue going to yellow on this side. This has to be wired like this for it to work, and this is going to be the same for both the front and the rear Hall effect connections. So let's connect the rear one up now. Here's our rear motor wire. Here's our Hall effect connector. And I'm just going to plug it on directly. Again, we got rid of those little adapter cables. I plug it on directly. Now, I've already got mine wired, but again, you're going to have to do the same thing with this one. Red wire here comes through to red wire on the other side. Black wire comes through to the black wire on the other side. I'm going to flip it over. I've got my green in the middle, coming through to the green in the middle. And now I've got my yellow here, comes through to blue on this side. I've got my blue here, coming through to yellow on this side. So both these are identically wired. Regardless of how your wires are looking on one side or the other, they could be all mixed up from what I'm saying. Just make them look like this: blue to yellow, green to green, yellow to blue, red to red, black to black. And that's the correct way to make these work. Okay, now we got our Hall connections connected. The next thing we're going to do is hook up our motor phase wires. Let's start with the rear one here. Again, we've got blue, green, yellow. And on a controller, we've got blue, green, and yellow. Okay, so this is a little bit different too. We're going to first start with our yellow wire. And again, I'm just using wire nuts. If you have those other connectors, like on the original controller with the bolt and the nut going through it, if you want to continue to use that, you can. Just make sure you tape them up good and isolate them, because you don't want those shorting. In my case, again, I'm just using wire nuts. First thing I'm going to do is grab one of my wire nuts. I'm going to connect the yellow to the yellow. So make sure you got your rear motor wire and your rear controller. And I'm putting the yellow to the yellow. Just going to put them like next to each other like that. And I'm going to screw on my wire nut. Get it nice and tight. And then once that's on there, I shouldn't be able to pull either wire out. They're now in there tight. They're not going to go anywhere. This thing's not going to vibrate off. So that's done with that one. Next, I'm going to take another wire nut. Now this is where it gets a little different. We've got blue and green left on both sides. We're going to take the green motor wire and connect it to the blue controller wire. So we got to go green to blue. Want to get nice and tight on there. And then I double check. I always like double checking by pulling on the wires, make sure they're not going to come out, and they're not. Okay? And then lastly, we have two wires left, the blue from the motor and the green from the controller, and of course those are going to go together. Okay, it's good and tight. Pulling the wires, neither are coming off. So there we go. Once again, rear motor wire. We've got yellow going to yellow to the controller. We've got the blue going to the green of the controller. And we've got the green going to the blue of the controller. So it's not just straight colors. You got to swap the blue and green on the phase wires. Same thing on the front. We're going to connect the yellow to the front motor yellow wire. We're going to connect the green from the front motor wire to the blue, and we're going to connect the blue to the green. Okay, so now I got my front phase wires hooked up. Again, I've got yellow going to yellow, green from the motor going to blue of the controller, and blue from the motor going to green of the controller. So the front and back wire up are the same for the phase wires. You got to cross the green and the blue, and the Hall effect where you got to swap the blue and the yellow, as we previously said. Okay, so now we've got our phase wires hooked up. We've got our Hall effect wires hooked up. Next thing we got to do, the front and back controllers have to basically talk to each other so they know what each other's doing. There's a cable coming off the front controller that looks like this, and it looks like it's a flat black connector. 1, 2, 3, has 6 pins on it. It's a female. It's the only connector like that on this front controller. So you take that and you look at the back controller. You can see there's kind of two connectors that look the same. This one and this one here. The difference is one's female, one's male, has the pins in it. So we want to plug one of these onto the front controller so they talk together. This one's female, so obviously we have to take the one that has the pins, the male, and that's the way you can tell. And you simply plug those together so the locking mechanism snaps in there. Okay, so now we've got the controllers linked together. Okay, the next thing we need to do is connect up our display, the display/throttle, which again comes down this wire through here, and we got to use our new display. You can't use the old one. You have to use the new one they give you that has this connector on it. Okay, there's only one connector left that this will fit on, and that's on the rear controller. It's the one we just kind of looked at a second ago. Flat, 6-pin, female. The display throttle has male pins on it. There's no other connector left for this to plug onto, so that's very clear. It plugs onto there. Now, when I took mine apart, since I had already done this, I went ahead and put little labels on it. You can see I got a display label there. It's not necessary that you do that. I did it just to make it easier for me. when I'm taking this thing apart. Okay, so now we got our display slash throttle hooked up. The next thing we need to hook up is our dual switch button for the single dual mode motors and eco turbo mode. Now that comes down a cable again through the stem, and I can tell which one it is by pulling on it like this. And if I follow that all the way through, it comes out to this cable that has two connectors on it. They're both male, so they both have pins in them. One of them is a red-yellow wires. This one actually looks like it's backing out. Take a look at your connectors as you're doing this to make sure none of these wires are coming out. I don't quite like this one. You can see one pin is higher, sitting up higher than the other one. It looks like that one's kind of pushed back. I should do something about that while I got the chance now. It looks like that's backed out a little bit. Oh, there you go. I pushed it back in. Okay, it looks solid now. It's not coming out. So it looks like it's kind of backing out. These two have that same little locking mechanism like we just went over. Okay, so again, we got a yellow and a red wire, and a blue and a green wire. Okay, now if we look at our cables that we connected together, the two controllers connected together, this one right here, back controller to the front controller. If we look on the front controller side of that connector, we can see there's a gray and black wire that's kind of pigtailed off and comes to a 2-pin female. I have it labeled Eco because I know that's the switch. So again, you find that connector that's connecting the back to the front controller. You find the gray and black wire coming off of it that goes to a 2-pin connector. And that's going to go to your red and yellow wired plug. You can see I put a label on mine, Eco, so I know it's that switch, and I put red/yellow. So that's where the red-yellow plug goes. Okay. So now that red-yellow plug is going through to that gray-black wire, which is going to that connector that connects the two controllers together. Okay, we've got one more plug here, is blue and green wires. Looking at that same connector that connects the two controllers together, there's a green wire that comes off it on the front controller side, and it goes into a 2-pin connector, and then the green wire comes back out and goes into the front controller. Okay, I've got that labeled Eco 2, blue, green. This is where you connect this other connector from the switches, the dual motor switch. Okay, so again, we've got the red and yellow going to this gray-black wire that goes back into that connector that mates the two controllers together. We've got the blue-green wire going into the 2-pin connector that just goes to green wires going back to that same connector and into the front. So now we've got our dual motor switch and eco mode switches connected. Okay, the next thing we need to do is hook up our alarm module. Without the alarm module connected, this thing will not power on. So I'm going to take our alarm module. It's got one connector on it. This green wire is just a receiver antenna from your remote control, so that doesn't really connect anywhere. It's just an antenna. We've got one connector, orange, black, red wires, 3 pins. Okay, now we're going to look at our rear controller. We're going to look at the cables coming off of it. And there's this one kind of longer cable than any of the others. On one, at the end, there's a 2-pin. It goes to an orange and black wire. Goes to another 2-pin female with orange and black. I've got that taped off because you don't actually use that one. And those orange and black wires go back into this third connector here. Now if we look at this, if we look at our display, this is where our display is connected to the rear controller. There's an orange wire that comes out of that display port from the controller, and if you just follow that back, that goes to this connector, which is the alarm port, which then goes off to those orange and blacks up there. So it's the orange and black, it's the orange wire coming from that port. If you follow it, it comes from the display into that port. So we're going to take our alarm module and we're going to plug it on there. Okay, you could hear the alarm chirp when I put it on there. I don't actually have power connected to the controllers yet, but there's a capacitor inside the rear controller that had a charge on it yet, so it did that. Normally you'll hear that when you plug the power in. Okay, so now we have our phase wire motors connected for both controllers. We've got our Hall effect connected to both controllers. We've got our dual motor eco switch connected. We've got our display connected, and we've got our alarm connected. All we got to do now is add power to the controllers, and we should be able to spin the motors. Don't have the lights or anything hooked up yet. Again, that'll be a different video. So I'm going to now take my battery, and it doesn't matter which one. There's 2 ports. They're identical. I'm going to plug my front controller on, just like that. These are keyed, so you can't get it backwards. You wouldn't want to get it backwards. That would be a problem. But they're keyed. There's like a square end and a round end, so you can't possibly plug them on backwards. I'm going to take my rear connector, my rear power connector, kind of get it through the wires here. Now on your rear controller, when you plug this on to your battery, you're most likely going to get a spark, some arcing, maybe a little pop because there's going to be a spark. That's normal. Don't worry about it. Just plug it on. So let's see if we see that spark or hear it pop. Normally, your alarm's going to chirp when you do this too. Okay, I don't know if you heard the pop, but that was the spark arcing inside of there. Again, just push it on, you're fine. And you heard the alarm chirp again. The thing is, now that the alarm has chirped like that, it's still in the power off condition. So now we got to take our remote control, and basically since we heard it chirp twice, that would be like the scooter's locked, you hit the unlock button, it chirped twice, power is still going to be off to the scooter until you hit this lightning bolt button 2 times, and you should hear the alarm beep once then. Once it beeps, now there's power to the scooter. We should be able to turn on the display. Turning on the display, we hit this power button, just hold it for a few seconds. Can you see that okay here? So the display is now on. We should be able to now power the wheels. I'm going to leave it in single motor. This button, the out way is single. If you push it in, it's dual motor. Let's leave it in single for now. Just as I'm at it, this eco button, when you push it in, it's in eco mode. Out is in turbo mode. Eco mode is really tame. I don't think I'll ever ride in eco mode. It's just too slow at that point. Turbo mode is the one I want to ride in. So I'm going to leave it in single motor mode first, and we're going to hit the throttle and try to spin our rear wheel. Okay, so I'm going to hit the throttle, and our motor's going. So that's good. We got a rear motor going. Now let's hit this dual motor button. I'm going to push that in. So now both our front and rear motors should go. And there we go. So we're good. We got our scooter up and running. We got the motors running. Okay, so there's one more thing I want to mention here. When you get to this point to test your wheels, let's say it's in the conditioners now. I got my throttle turned on. I hit my throttle, and the rear motor's not spinning. Oh, maybe I did something wrong. No. When these things are brand new, this throttle's going to come up. There's settings you got to do in it. Right now, when it comes up, originally, it's in the setting for where the scooter has to be moving before the throttle will come on. So just to test it now, because it's in that mode, I'm hitting the throttle. Nothing's happening with my back wheel. So I'm going to spin the wheel. I'm going to get my hand out of there first, and then I'm going to hit the throttle. I don't want my hand in there when I hit the throttle because I don't want to lose a finger. So, okay, I'm going to spin the wheel. Okay, right now, throttle, nothing happens. Okay, I'm going to spin the wheel, then throttle. And now you can see it's going. And that's all, again, because the setting in the controller in the display right now is set so it won't take off if you hit the throttle. The scooter's got to be moving. I'll go over those settings. There's 9 settings in here you can set. I'll go over that shortly to show you how to set those up. But that's it for this one right now. We've got our motors hooked up, dual motor. Now you can see the front wheel's not spinning because I didn't spin that one too. Let me try that. There, now I got them both moving. And again, that's because that setting is set currently, so the scooter has to be moving before the throttle will go. You can change that, so as soon as you hit the throttle, even when you're a dead stop, the scooter will go. And again, I'll go over that shortly. All right, guys, hope that helps. If you got any questions, I've got my email down in the comments. Drop me an email, I'll help you out. All right, take care, guys. Peace.